Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Johnny Vlogs. Today's episode brought to you by Ben Salmon, back on the Patreon support. Thank you so much, Ben. We also have Jennifer Horman, who has pledged, as well as Brianne Holderby. Thank each and every one of you. I really appreciate it. Today's topic, I don't know, might go a little wide, but I wanted to start with the concept that we talked about a little bit in Itchy Mysteries a few weeks ago. The one called Enlighten Us, I hope that's right, about James Arthur Ray. And I'm going to go into it enough that if you didn't watch that episode or if you didn't watch the movie, it's okay. I'll kind of explain the thought to you. But essentially, my first exposure to James Arthur Ray was a film called The Secret, which came out, I want to say, maybe 11 or 12 years ago, or at least that's when it kind of became popular. I saw it back then, and as I mentioned in the Itchy Mysteries, it started me down the path of consuming self-help literature. And what's kind of interesting about that is, first of all, I didn't really read a whole lot back then, around that time. So it was kind of cool that it at least got me interested in a topic that would bring me into reading a bit more. So what's really interesting is it is now available on Hulu. So if you have a Hulu subscription, you could watch it for free. I don't know if it's available on Hulu without a subscription. I know some of their content is, and they just interject commercials. It might be. So even if you don't have a subscription, you might want to check it out. I don't want to do a full review of it here, but I did rewatch it, and just kind of rewatching it 10 years later, I had some different feelings about it. And I wanted to talk about James Arthur Ray in particular and how he appears on it. So in short, what The Secret is, at least in film form, is a discussion from several different philosophers, authors. They even have a couple of scientists, I guess, kind of. I think they have one guy that's like a quantum physics type guy, but most of it is philosophers and authors that are talking about this mysterious secret. And the mysterious secret turns out to be the law of attraction. So what is the law of attraction? In principle, it works like this. If you want something, you have to visualize it. There's one example where the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul talked about he wanted to make $100,000 by the end of the year. He didn't know how it was going to happen, but he took a $1 bill, put a bunch of zeros after it, and then stapled it above his bed. And that year he wound up making $98,000. $98,000. So it's a little bit about positive thinking. It's a little bit about visualization of what you want. It's a little bit about recognizing what's going on within your emotional landscape and trying to handle that better. Things that I think most people would come to appreciate. There's like a third of that type of content in there. Then there's another third that is kind of this overproduced storytelling that's going on. Like when they start talking about this law of attraction, there's one point where a guy's thinking about an elephant, and all of a sudden an elephant appears in his room and he has to clean up the elephant's poop. And they had that whole scene laid out because they wanted to explain to you that the law of attraction does not work instantly. It gives you time before whatever you want comes to you, so that if you change your mind, that's not going to disrupt your life. But those scenes are like really hokey, really overproduced. The whole beginning of it is like this wannabe Indiana Jones thing where someone is going to discover the secret that all these people in history have known for years, all these famous people in history. It never gives you information about them actually knowing it. It never gives you like the proof points of, well, we know Abraham Lincoln was using the power of attraction because he wrote about it in this book, or he talked about it at this speech. It tells you that that's what's happened, but it doesn't tell you how it's proven that they know that all these famous people have used the secret. So, 1/3 overproduction, 1/3 actually good messaging, and then 1/3 what I consider extremely bad messaging. And let me just tell you about that third. There's a lot of scenarios they talk about in it where it is specifically talking about money or material desires, and they describe it as, once you get to know the secret, it's like having a catalog and you can just order whatever you want and it's going to show up on your doorstep. They literally have a scene that they shoot with this little boy who's looking in like a shopping catalog at this bike that he really wants. And literally a few scenes later, he opens the front door and the bike is there and his grandfather's there with a big smile. It's a little insulting, I guess, to me, coming from where I'm at with things now. And this may be different for you. I think that film is engineered to reach out to people that are somewhat desperate. And just because of those specific types of messages. Do you want more money? Do you want a bigger house? Do you want a better car? The Secret will get it for you. I don't feel like that is necessarily stepping towards being more enlightened if you are questing for material objects like that without really understanding what those objects do for you. And that's why I'm glad I kind of went into my little self-help kick and got to understand those types of things for me. Because, there was a time where I was working at a studio that was really important to me for some reason. I was making a bunch of money, but I couldn't seem to save it. It was just blowing all over the place. So that wasn't really important to me. But I had all this material crap that, you buy it, you get it home, and the next day it just becomes part of your crap. It doesn't really give you anything personally. It doesn't fulfill a need within you in terms of being a better person, maybe enjoying your life more if it's a video game or something. But even those are very finite. You play them for 10 hours and you're done type situation. So it was really an important thing for me to boil down for myself what was truly, truly important. And yes, there is something about you have to think about those things. You have to keep them in your mindset with a positive energy to them, because if you let negativity creep in there, everything that you see gets colored that way. And I think that's where, at least the film version of The Secret works really well, is trying to teach you that the negative thoughts can really destroy your whole day, send you down a path you don't want to go down, blah, blah, blah. This is where I get to James Arthur Ray. So the stuff that he talks about specifically in the film is pretty much what I explained to you. He's talking a lot about how you can pretty much will things into existence, and you have to kind of keep your energy and your thoughts going in that direction to have those things, to manifest those things, I guess is a better way to say it. And it made me wonder about the event that happened in 2009 at the Sweat Lodge where the 3 people died. When I reviewed the movie, I spoke about how he seems to have this blind spot a little bit in himself where he can't see that he kind of put people into unnecessary risk there. There's even one part of the film where someone was questioning him about the deaths at one of his first meetings after he got out of jail. And he started to go down this explanation of, well, why are you assuming that death is a bad thing? So they didn't show a whole lot of that conversation, but I think what it was alluding to was, from his perspective, he was helping these people try to transcend who they already are. And maybe in his head, at least in that conversation, he had a belief that them transcending life and going into the afterlife was part of that process, and he helped them do that. I think that is part of that blind spot that I'm trying to make sense of in terms of what I see in his character. It was obvious from the start of his stuff that he wanted to help people, and he certainly manifested that. All of a sudden his meetings were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he wanted those to be productions, and he certainly manifested that. Then he wanted those stunts, and he certainly manifested the stunts that were helping people push through their own boundaries. But I don't think people were really coming to him to move into another dimension or to, leave the existence on this planet. I think the transcendence was pretty defined as they wanted to be different people here while they were alive. So what I wondered after I had rewatched The Secret was, if he's right about what he's saying there and he really does manifest what happens to him, did he bring that on? Did he do it to himself? And in one way, I think he kind of did, because if you consider that if he would have been thinking about truly helping these people, keeping them safe while they were doing this, he would have had some kind of emergency medical response team that was just waiting outside the tent, or some mechanism for checking on people if they didn't feel like they were doing good. Maybe get them out of the tent, have someone check on them, make sure their vitals are okay, make sure they want to go back in, and then get them back in there somehow. But that was not in his agenda for how that event was supposed to happen. He was much more focused I think, on forcing them through a transition instead of helping to lead the way for them to be able to do it for themselves. So I still wrestle with the question, did he really manifest that? Did he create it himself? I don't think the secret showed up in the courtroom, but it would have been interesting if some of those clips would have, because he's basically pretty much saying that, he's making his own reality at this point. And his reality certainly took a pretty severe turn in October of 2009. I don't know. So I went to the website, and The Secret is still there. It's thesecret.tv, if I remember right. They've got products all over the place. They have, of course, the movie, the books. They have new books. They have the soundtrack. They have audiobooks. They're just pumping that thing. And I even checked out James Arthur Ray's website, and he looks like he's sliding, or trying to slide right back to where he was before and continue his stuff, which it's weird. I've got this kind of two ways of feeling about him. I think he's a really, really good speaker, and I think that if he understood some of the fallacies within him and maybe a little humility, which you really think that 2 years in prison would have helped him come to grips with, I think that he could really be valuable in terms of speaking to others, motivating them, and helping them become better people. But I don't get that feeling. I don't know if he's really there. By the end of the film, Enlighten Us, it seems like he doesn't see that blind spot. He's just really pushing back towards his success. And he talks about money quite a bit, the fact that he's basically broke. And if you look at his website, it looks like it's polished to just kind of swing him back into that image. So I don't know. I did have a couple people ask about books that I had read when I went through this period. Another person that popped up in terms of Oprah Winfrey was Eckhart Tolle. He wrote a book called The Power of Now, which is really, really good. And there are a few books that followed that up that weren't quite as strong. I think if you're only going to read one of those, make it The Power of Now. There was a really interesting book because it was a fictional story, but it had all these elements of spirituality kind of cooked into it. It made you feel really good to read because it was like an adventure story, but then there's this belief structure, kind of, I don't know if it was the law of attraction per se, but kind of like, reaching a destination you didn't expect, and the wealth there is much greater than you could have ever anticipated. That one, I almost forget the name on this all the time. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it's been translated to all kinds of different languages. So it's really, really popular. And I think it's a fun way to potentially start looking at these types of materials if you want to get into it. Because like I said, it's kind of like an action story that just has some of those ideals built into it. And then outside of that, there was another one called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. He also wrote The Fifth Agreement, which once again, not quite as good as The Four Agreements, but a really good read. If you are interested in that stuff, those are the books in particular that kind of stick with me, that I still think about, the things that I learned about in those. So I just wanted to share that with the rest of you. But tell me about it in the comments below. What do you think about Mr. James Arthur Ray and The Secret? Is this all poppycock? Did he really do this? Did he manifest this in some way? I'm kind of feeling like he at least was responsible for it. I don't know if that's quite the same as manifesting it, but tell me what you think in the comments below. Once again, as usual, I please ask that you be respectful. This is kind of treading almost into not quite a religious conversation, but it's a belief structure conversation. So you may read things down there you don't agree with. It's okay if people don't think like you. Let's just all be respectful to each other and see if we can have a good, meaningful conversation where maybe we get some new insight or learn some new things. Sounds good to me. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of Johnny Vlogs. I hope you are starting up to have a great week. If you're not, think about that mind frame. Maybe there's something you can do to make it a little better today. Maybe that'll snowball into making it better tomorrow. And then all of a sudden your grandpa will show up with that rad new bike at your door. Probably not, but take care everyone. I will see you back here on the Lord and Arch channel.